Well, greetings and welcome to our live stream today titled Engineering the Future Exciting Paradigms Driving Manufacturing Innovation. My name is Dwayne Butcher with Flexware Innovation, and I get the honor of hosting today's panel. Before we dive in, though, I wanted to explain just a little bit, provide a little bit of context as to what brought us here. So first, this is National Engineers Week, if you didn't know. National Engineers Week is something that Flexware celebrates every year. We take the opportunity to recognize engineers that work here at Flexware, but at the same time, we also wanted to provide something to the larger manufacturing community as part of this week's celebration. So that's part of what brought us here. The other part that brought us here is my frustration, essentially, with the hype and maybe the misinformation surrounding digital transformation, just digital in manufacturing. Um, Thank you to Jeff Winter for posting this on LinkedIn probably a couple weeks ago, I guess, Jeff. He posted this comedically to make the point that there is not a digital transformation in a box. It is hard work. So when you're trying to get from your current condition to your target condition, it's not as easy as simply ordering a box of digital transformation off of Amazon. And I know all of us on this call are keenly aware of this. In reality, this is what it looks like more than anything. And I pulled this diagram from one of my favorite books in the continuous improvement space. It's a book called Toyota Kata by Mike Rother. Highly encouraged if you've not yet read it. But essentially what he's saying is you've got a current condition and you've got some target condition where you're headed. What exists between that is an unpredictable, what Mike calls the gray zone. I share this only because what we're going to be talking about is not easy. It's not opening a box from Amazon. It's hard work. It's complicated. There's not, unfortunately, steps 1, 2, 3 to carry this out. So I'm hoping that as we talk today, we can move beyond some of the hype and the promise of easy answers. So that's what brought us here. What happened next is I thought, well, who could I pull together to help address some of this? And I looked across the last several years and really going back a couple of decades with Gilad. I look back at some people that have challenged me in some way personally to maybe think differently. So that's who you're going to hear from today. This is my personal. This is I'm starstruck in some respects to be able to host this great call with these four industry leaders. So with that said, what I'm going to do is ask. By the way, this is not scripted. This is a casual conversation. So we're going to wind this up and see how it goes. So what I'd like to ask the panel to do is to briefly introduce yourselves, if you could. Most of us know who you are, but if you could just take 30 seconds, tell us who you are, and let's just go in order of the how you're pictured on the slide here. So Jeff.
Sure, I can go first. So my name's
you.
Jeff Winter. I'm the Senior Director of Industry Strategy for Manufacturing with Hitachi Solutions. And basically that means it's my job to help point the company in the right direction to be a best-in-class digital transformation provider in manufacturing. But most people know me as the Industry 4.0 guy, the guy who knows his stats and trends and industry benchmarks and best practices and posts 5 to 6 times a week on LinkedIn, sharing that knowledge with everyone. So if you like the stuff I talk about today, you'll find it on LinkedIn.
Perfect. Thank you, Jeff.
Awesome. I'm Walker Reynolds. I am an engineer, a sociologist, and an educator by education. I've been in the industry some 25 years now. Most people know me as the guy on YouTube who is very critical of what should be the vendors who should be the leaders in our industry, but that have led manufacturers astray. And I am the architect who created the unified namespace architecture that you see around all over the place. And today, primarily, I educate mastermind and mentorship students at IIoT.University.
Great.
Yeah. So,
Gilad?
yeah. Hello, everybody. My name is Gilad Langer. For me, digital transformation is my passion. It's also my lifelong work. I've been doing it since the 90s. I currently work for Tulip. I am the industry practice lead for Tulip in a similar role to Jeff, helping our customers and the industry kind of see the light, what's beyond the gray zone, and how to traverse the gray zone. I have a number of other metaphors and analogies that will come up, I'm sure. But I think, the reason why it's my lifelong work is that I actually started back in the 90s to discuss these concepts that we currently talk about today, IIoT and digital transformation, Industry 4.0, UNS. These are concepts that were called different things in the 90s because we had different types of technologies. In Europe, actually, it's the predecessor or the precursor to what was then formed in Europe as Industry 4.0 mostly in Germany. So the pre-work for that is what I was involved in, and that's what I've been doing all of my career in different places, both for software companies, but also for integrators. It is just a pleasure to see it come to fruition. So that's kind of I'm living the dream right now, seeing how we use this technology in industry.
That's great. And Isaac?
Yes, sir. Dwayne, you open platform. It's going to be interesting because we have a lot of interesting people here. And yeah, I won't hold back. But yeah, Isaac Bennett. I come from the IT side. Been in IT for a long while, and in manufacturing for about 15 years. And I was brought into this world by a plant manager asking how IT could help on the plant floor. So the IT OT convergence is a big deal. So I come from the dark side, the IT side. And that's kind of where my perspective is. I'm also the bald one, if you want to remember that. So.
Hey, I'm trying to catch up with you, Isaac. Well, great. Thank you for doing just a brief introduction, everyone. I'm going to dive right in. So let's turn our attention to some questions I've got for you, and we'll see where it goes. So you've all been in and around manufacturing for quite some time. Some of us longer than others. And you have heard over that time, this is the next big thing, right? This is the technology that's going to completely change and radicalize how we manufacture. We're hearing a lot of that today, right? With AI and the number of technologies that are being talked about and written about. So my question is, of all of these technologies that we're currently talking about, what most intrigues you about these technologies, and what do you think has the biggest opportunity to change paradigms for manufacturers? So I'm going to kind of open it up here, and let's see who jumps in first.
You need to pick one.
I'm happy to get started. That way I'll get the ball rolling. I'll get the ball rolling. So in terms of what I'm most excited about, I think people will be surprised. I actually shot a video this morning about some important lessons mentors have taught me over the course of my career. I have 3 mentors that I've had 25 years. They've been with me the whole time. They've never steered me wrong. And one of the things that a mentor, his name's Joe Rolfe. He was one of my first managers ever. He's still a mentor to this day. Joe told me, he said, whenever you're listening to marketing and business development speak, whenever someone's trying to quote unquote sell you something, you need to ask yourself 3 questions. So question number 1 is, why should I listen to this person? Question number 2 is, what are they trying to sell me? And question number 3, most important, is what is the incentive and who is incentivized? And I thought about that this morning shooting this video about the technology that's being sold to everybody. And the most interesting thing is that the most exciting technology available to us is the technology that no one has a financial incentive to sell. and it is open stacks. It is open technology that creates interoperability out of the box. That is, if Jalad decides that he's going to use a protocol like MQTT as an underlying communications protocol for his infrastructure, and I decide I'm going to use MQTT, which no one owns, then by default, our infrastructures will be interoperable. So that's number one, that we can use open technology to create interoperability. It's been available for decades. And number two is the technological advancement with social media has given us the ability to skip past the marketing and business development people and go directly to the people who build the actual solutions, and they tell you what works. When 2 decades ago, all you were hearing was a refined message from the people who controlled the communications platforms. That would be like Rockwell Automation, who does Automation Fair, or the folks at Hanna-Bernesi kind of controlled what the industry was hearing. But today we have the ability to go to the people who build the actual solutions, and they can tell you what works and what didn't and what roadblocks they ran into. That's what I'm most excited about. For the manufacturer, what you should be most excited about, it is the value that CI/CD, continuous integration and continuous in development, on an open infrastructure can create for your business. That is, you can create citizen developers. A rank and file employee on the edge can build a solution that you can then vet and decide whether or not to scale to your business. So now what happens is you turn everyone in your organization into an innovator. So now it's not just one select group who is a subsidiary of, say, IT. It is all citizen developers. Their ideas now become force multipliers for your business. That's what I'm most excited about.
Yeah.
So I'm going to take that and put it in perspective. There's a theory behind why that is so powerful, right? The first thing you mentioned, Walker, was it has to do with collaboration. So the reason why these technologies are so powerful is because they create this network effect. What happens in a bottoms-up emergent type of things, right? So when people say IoT, for example, they think of a technology. IoT is a concept. IoT is basically creating a network of nodes that are autonomous and collaborative. In order to be collaborative, they need to communicate with each other, and hence comes MQTT as an example of that's how they do. The other part of it is this, the notion of democratization, making everybody right. That's what's made digital technology we use in our everyday life so powerful and make us more productive. I use Uber and Lyft as an example many times, and in terms of how it increases productivity. How it increases productivity because there was a period where it still is. If you go to the airport right now, you can't get in. There's a traffic jam. Why? Because everybody's in an Uber going to the airport. They're not using their cars anymore. That's a measurement. It increases the productivity. Why? Because what does Uber do? It democratizes the taxi service. Everybody can be a taxi service provider, and anybody can be a taxi service consumer. Anybody just becomes an it. You don't need to go to. So that's the notion of democratization. And that's kind of the underlying concepts that these technologies enhance and enforce and enable that makes us more productive. And back to why do we even want to go to digital transformation? The way I look at it has to be outcome. People can, they're skeptical about, is there a transformation? It's not a transformation. We just look at the outcome. Is it going to make us more productive? If it is, well, I guess it's a paradigm shift, an order of magnitude more productive, right? So that's also a way to measure technology. Is it going to make us more productive?
Yes.
I'll jump in and so I'm going to go with the standard route for my first answer because artificial intelligence is the one that intrigues me the most. And I'm not going to say it in terms of the technologies that are out there, whether it's large language models, whether it's neural networks, whether it's generative AI, whatever you want to pick, machine learning, but more around the quest to replicate human intelligence and the impact that human intelligence entity, if you want to call it, will have on our lives. It's one of very few technologies that will completely permeate all aspects of our personal and professional lives. It will be as ubiquitous as the internet and electricity was when they first came out. And I can't think of any other technologies that will be that ubiquitous everywhere. In terms of manufacturing, it'll impact every person from shop floor to CEO in every single function. And the thing that I am most intrigued about it is how it's the only technology that you can put an input in to, we'll just call it the artificial intelligence, this black box, and get an output that you don't expect. Compared to traditional logic, you know exactly what you're going to get if it follows the rules. And that offers a huge amount of creativity and new areas that we would never think of because something else is actually helping us determine it. The second one I'm going to say is one that's not talked about is augmented reality. I don't think we're there yet, but it intrigues me the most. All right. I'm not talking about like Apple's Vision Pro. I'm talking about Apple Vision Pro number 10. I'm talking about the one where it's now completely integrated into what we do. We're talking more Minority Report style, or where you can have it built into your contact lens. But that ability to augment your reality directly with a digital world, I think will completely change us once again. And that will once again blend the personal and professional lives ubiquitously across everything that we do.
And by the way, I would argue augmented reality, which I do believe is, I think we talk about it way too early. People have been talking about augmented reality for 15 years and they're like, oh, we never saw it come to fruition. Well, it's because we talked about it too early. Like where is augmented reality really going to come into play? Well, it's really more Neuralink. It's not putting a display on your contact lens or on your glasses. It is wiring directly into your brain. Whether you agree with it morally or not, it is milk that is out of the jar and there's no way to put it back in. And what it is it's going to be merging. This is the reason Elon Musk did Neuralink. The whole idea was to merge artificial intelligence with human intelligence through wires. That was literally the concept. And and I think the augmented reality is absolutely, think about when you walk up to a group of people. What do you do when we go? I'm going to go to Hanover Messe in April, right? And so there's going to be thousands and thousands and thousands of people there, right? And what do I have to do to talk to the people I needed? I have to introduce myself to everyone. I got to look at their badge. No, the possibilities with augmented reality is I walk up and I see Jeff's LinkedIn. I literally, an overlay will be his LinkedIn profile and maybe the last 2 posts he just put on LinkedIn without me ever even thinking about it, right? And I want to say one other thing about artificial intelligence that I think is very important. Every manufacturer wants to use artificial intelligence to predict the future. They want artificial intelligence is, basically replicating human intelligence with computers, and machine learning is using computers to learn from data. That's the difference, right? Well, everybody wants to use AI and machine learning to predict the future and make decisions automatically. But no one wants to take the steps. Dwayne, you talked about this, about how hard this is. Digital transformation is not, you can't get it in a box because it's not a product. It's not an outcome. Digital transformation is a strategy. Okay. So you don't put a strategy in a box. Okay. You can't buy a strategy. Strategy is something you formulate. Everybody wants the outcome of AI and machine learning, but very few people understand the work you have to go through, re-educating your organization, implementing an open infrastructure, democratizing the access to data. I mean, think, Isaac's an IT guy, and he talked about he's from the dark side, right? The first thing I wanted to say was, why is it we're not doing anything about making IT from the light side, not the dark side? Why is it we don't have those conversations? We just accept IT is on the dark side. Why? Because of this legacy thinking in IT groups. Part of the democratization of data that will ultimately get us to these end goals of AI and ML is to redefine what IT actually is. It's a whole paradigm. Like 1 hour for this conversation is not, we could do this for 6 hours, by the way. We could literally sit here and talk about it for 6 hours.
Yep.
Isaac, I'm definitely interested in hearing what you got to say.
No, I want to piggyback on what you said because I agree. But I'm also going to bring it down a level. And I just did a calculation really quick. I mean, let's be honest. We already have chips embedded. We have that phone on us all the time.
We're already in.
And I heard a statistic today that you look at your phone 300 close to 350 times a day. If you break that, I just calculated it. If you break that down by the hours you're awake, usually you're awake about 16 hours a day. That is 22 times an hour you're looking at your phone. And that is really, I probably do it myself. But yeah, I mean, that is attached to you all the time. And I use generative AI all the time now to write emails, presentations. I mean, I probably use it more than Google these days. But back to Dwayne's original question, for me, from an IT perspective, there are so many things that are enabling manufacturers. And I'm going to bring it down to say, I walk into plants all the time, and how many plants use paper? 100%. There is no plant I've ever walked into that is not using an Excel spreadsheet or a piece of paper on the plant floor. The great thing is, this is not 1995 anymore, right? And there is so many advancements in chip technology and software technology that you can get a quality management software, a SaaS model, and you can load it up in your computer and have it running within 30 minutes. I mean, that was no way possible 20, 25 years ago. You had to buy a server, you had to get CapEx, you had to load it, you had to configure it. So now this advancement, it can be somewhat overwhelming because it's so crowded now. I mean, there's 100 million MES systems and, so many different ERP systems. It can be a bit overwhelming.
There's 100 million systems that call themselves MES, but there's not 100 million MES systems. Yes.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. But the good news is the entry point to get into those type of pieces of software is a lot less. You just got to make sure you got a robust network that's secure, right? And that's where the IT guys come in and shake their finger at you and say, hey, that's not secure. That's usually the issue. But that's where I see the exciting thing is that these companies don't need to develop their own software anymore. They can bring in a QM software, a piece here, a piece there, that is relatively inexpensive. And also the chip technology. I mean, you can get an industrial sensor that can do vibration, torque, and all this stuff that you can attach to an older machine. And, it could be a $5 million machine. And you can start pulling data from that within a matter of days if you are really wanting to pull data from that machine. And those sensors are really inexpensive. It's like the TVs, right? I mean, when HD TVs first came out, they were pretty expensive. But now it's like, geez, at $200 nowadays, I can bring home an HD TV. So that's where I see.
Why is it you can bring home a TV for $200? Because it costs more than $200 to manufacture it. It's because of the software they put on board of the TV that they make the money off of, right?
Yeah.
It's
piggybacking, right?
Right. It's the same thing with our technology here. In industry, we haven't seen that, right? We don't, Rockwell. I don't want to pick on specific companies, but because we're in the United States, Rockwell ControlLogix platform, the price hasn't come down. In 20 years, price has not come down. Right. So right now, if you want to, get an L7, look at the pricing for an L7 20 years ago, and then look at it today. It's higher. It's not less. Why? What's the reason? The reason is because Rockwell didn't figure out how to leverage the data that they collect as a commodity. Manufacturers have figured out how to the ones who were following. Dwayne talked about Toyota. I'm a huge fan of Kaikaku. I'm a huge fan of, we are in the Kaikaku phase right now between Industry 3 and Industry 4 for most legacy manufacturers, right? Kaikaku is, old game, new rules, right? What most people don't understand is that if you look at why Tesla is awesome or Amazon is awesome or Volkswagen North America is awesome, if you look at those companies, why are they awesome? The first thing that they did was they made data their primary commodity. Their decision was data would be the primary commodity in the business. That the value stream is additive data all along the business so that we can use that data to make other manufacturers better, our suppliers better, our customers better. If that mentality isn't part of your journey, that data is going to become the primary commodity, well, then you're wasting your time in digital transformation.
So to bring that up, Jeff said something interesting, that AI, when you ask a question, it gives you an answer you did not expect. But yet we are dealing with engineers, and engineers love the fact that you get expected outcomes. And isn't that so? I personally find that as the biggest, the biggest challenge in explaining this transformation. Think about, even in regulated industries, it's even worse. Tell somebody that in your career function that this is going to give them something they don't expect. I mean, that's not compliant. How can we do that? What are we going to do? We are, as engineers, trained for only to understand the eventualities that, in the result space or the test space that we're working on. So how do how do we relax this terrible constraint that engineers have, right? Is the questions. And we talked previously a bit about unlearning and getting people, but to your point, even this notion of data, it is just so foreign for anybody in the Rockwell organization or people using Rockwell to tell them it's the data, it's not the hardware, because they're all hardware sellers, right?
Well, everybody here is MES, right? If you look, like Flexware is known for manufacturing execution in life sciences. Like that's a big part of Flexware's business, right? You guys are big on MES. My organizations, we're big on manufacturing execution. Tulip is redefining what manufacturing execution is as it relates to the operator, right? So what is the one thing that all digital MES, the first time you implement a digital MES system and you calculate OEE digitally for the very first time for a customer, and let's say that they're calculating it on paper, okay? When you calculate it digitally versus them calculating it on paper, is the digital OEE calculation ever higher than it is when they have it on paper? And the answer is no. They are always calculating it 2 or 3 times higher than we do with the actual raw digital events. I've never in my whole career calculated a higher digital OEE score than what they had on paper. And what does that tell you? I think when you do that, Shalad, when we talk about the engineer, the unlearning what you know. It starts with education, digital transformation. You have to reveal to them that they can't trust the manually collected data. The fidelity. The Japanese are the best at collecting data manually, and they only have 60% fidelity in the data. That is 6 out of every 10 data points can be trusted. In the United States, it's 3 in 10. So if you're calculating things manually, putting them on a spreadsheet, you can calculate 3 of those data points. You can trust 3 out of every 10 data points.
So let me jump in here. We're about halfway through. We've gotten one question, which is about what I expected and honestly what I was hoping for. But let me try to get a second one in here. We were talking about digital transformation here. When you look at an organization who is doing it well, what does it look like? What are they doing right? And Jeff, let's start with you.
Sure. And I'll kind of cue this up because I think the others are going to have some fun here with this, because I thought of a fun analogy. It's an okay one, but your digital transformation journey is like organizing a party in your home. And initially you might envision a small gathering with a few close friends, but as the idea evolves through talking to people, you decide to go all out and turn it into a full-fledged shindig. But to pull it off, you need a solid event plan. You need the right mix of guests representing your team. You need to make sure you have enough food and drink representing your resources, the right ambiance, your culture, and the flexibility to adapt when inevitably someone spills red wine on the carpet, representing unexpected challenges. But when an organization nails its digital transformation, it's kind of like watching the host manage all the chaos with a smile, ensuring everyone has a great time while the behind the scenes operations run smoothly. But the 3 things I would say that are kind of needed in this is, first, a clear strategic vision that is well articulated and well communicated, hopefully in 1 to 2 sentences. So Helion did a scholarly study last year of Industry 4.0 implementation challenges by a literature review by applying a process called interpretive structural modeling to ultimately identify the challenges and find their relationships and uncover the root cause and determine dependencies. And it's probably no surprise to anyone here, it just kind of confirms it. The root cause for Industry 4.0, according to this study, is lack of top management commitment, which includes a lack of vision. And this problem cascades against all other 10 barriers, with lack of training being the most impactful output of that. And then IT infrastructure being the second one that result of those top 2. And so every company needs that short statement. The second one is employee culture and engagement. And you need to kind of cultivate a supporting culture that fosters innovation and adaptability. And that's necessary because it ensures the workforce is motivated, skilled, and ready to contribute to the transformational efforts, not just fight it. In fact, according to the Manufacturing Leadership Council in their 2024 survey from a couple weeks ago, organizational structure or culture that resists change was cited as the primary issue to realizing a smart factory vision. So once you have your vision, that's the biggest barrier to hit it. And third is a agile and scalable technology infrastructure. You need to have something that allows your organization to adapt quickly to changes and scale efficiently. So you need to build an infrastructure that not only supports the current operations, but also accommodates future changes, because new technological progress and market conditions are changing at an accelerated rate, and you need to be able to adapt quickly without making significant overhauls or disruptions. And when all three are in place, you're poised to thrive. If you take ChatGPT as an example, it's one of the most disruptive technologies in many years. Those companies with the right vision, the right culture, and the right infrastructure were able to adapt quickly and integrate it in their company. They had pilots running within a month of its release and rollouts happening within a year. Those that don't have those three, we're now 18, 20 months later, and they still don't know what to do with it.
Yeah. Let me build on that. I love the analogy. So but I think we need to take it a bit further. So you want to have a party in your house, but your strategy, your vision is to have a full-blown tailgating at the NASCAR in the next state over. That's the paradigm change. So people come to your party thinking it's a party. You have a vision. We're going to go tailgating at NASCAR, right? Talk about infrastructure, right? I mean, you need to make sure that everybody at least has some vehicle, or you have a bus or something, the RVs and all of that to do that, right? I think we need to take it a step further. These analogies really need to emphasize the fact that it is something that you never imagined. That you're going to a party, but you're going to go so far, and you're going to do something that you never even imagined, and the outcome is going to be so. I mean, we can, in your analogy, I mean, the productivity we can measure as pleasure and experience, as measures of productivity. So, that party which you thought you're going to have, a bit of chit chat with your neighbors has become a full-blown experience watching NASCAR and doing tailgating.
I would say, what I always tell people is, why don't you go to the companies who are doing it right and reverse engineer what they're doing? And by the way, that's much harder than it sounds. Here's to my point. Tesla is not only is the number one car maker in the world, they are the number one manufacturer on the planet. So they're not just a world-class car company. They are a world-class manufacturer. To top it off, they are a world-class software development firm. They're all three. And look at all the car manufacturers who they compete against. So Ford, General Motors, BMW, Mercedes, Volkswagen, the legacies. Look at how hard it has been for them to adopt the mindsets and the applications that Tesla has demonstrated work. Tesla has given up most of their patents. You can read how they do things. You can go tour a gigafactory. Elon Musk will encourage you to copy them. And look how hard that's been for the legacy car manufacturers. So here's what the most successful companies do if you want to be successful. First and foremost, Jeff is absolutely right. It starts with strategy. What is strategy? Digital strategy. It's the why we want to be a digital company. It is the how we will make data the primary commodity. Why does data matter? Data matters because we want to use software to learn from the past, monitor the present so we can predict the future. Little things like I want to adjust a recipe before we end up with a bad outcome. I want to adjust the line speed before we end up with a bad outcome. I want to change my schedule before I end up doing 4 changeovers in the same shift instead of just 1, right? It's those types of actual applications. That's number 1. Number 2, it is a philosophical change in the mindset. So let's talk about IT. One of the questions we ask IT groups all the time is, are you a security and compliance organization or are you a service organization? If you want to know a characteristic of a world-class digital company, their IT department is service-based. They are a service organization. For example, it is a zero-tolerance policy to say no in a digitally transformed organization out of the IT group. So if someone comes to you and says, can I do X? And you say no, that is zero tolerance. You have to figure out a way to make it work. Number 1. Number 2, the IT departments understand that the way to make your organization more secure is not to put more hurdles in between you and the bad guys. It's to increase the digital fluency of your organization. that no one can hack me. I've had a standing $1 million offer. Okay. Standing $1 million offer. Okay. And no one has been able to hack. I am unhackable. I can hack everyone here. I can break into Jeff Winter's email without a problem. I could break into Jalad's email without a problem, but I cannot be hacked. Okay. Because my digital fluency is so high. And if you have an organization where the digital fluency is really high, then we are secure. And organizations understand that. And number 3, understanding that the real value in your organization comes from the edge, not just the data, but the people. And you have to figure out a way to unlock that potential. And you do that through digital infrastructure. This is why I'm so high on Tulip, for example. One of the reasons I'm so high on Tulip is it is the pane of glass through which we unlock the potential in human beings. Okay. If you look, those are the 3. I mean, Jeff nailed it. I love the analogy, by the way. I'm going to use it. But if you look at what people are most successful, it breaks it down into those 3 things: common infrastructure, unified namespace, picking the right tech, all that kind of stuff, minimum technical requirements, of course. But if you distill it into 3 things, it's those 3 things.
Isaac, I don't know if you have any thoughts there.
No, I mean, I would say if no one spills any wine, it's a boring party. So,
well, you learn from spilling the wine.
That's exactly what I was going to say. I mean, there is no innovation in creativity without failure. So you got to have, if I'm walking to a company, generally they embrace failure. It reminds me of that old Disney movie. God, what's the Meet the Robinsons? I don't know if anybody remembers that movie, but the whole basis of that movie was the philosophy of Walt Disney, talking about how you embrace failure, because that's how you learn. So you got to embrace the failure, and for sure. I would say the second thing is culture eats strategy for breakfast, and I've said this before. You can have the best strategy in the world, but if you don't have that culture in the company, that strategy is never going to come to fruition. And the last thing I'll say just real quickly is yes, you need failure, but you need failure in small chunks. You can't go out and do a 3-year science project and $500 million later have a failed ERP implementation. That doesn't work. So I always say, think big, start small, scale fast.
This goes to Jeff's point of agility. In order for you to remain agile, you have to bite off small chunks, right? You don't bite off big chunks. To remain agile, you got to bite off a small chunk. We say you must deliver value iteratively, and you do it every 4 to 6 weeks. So if I failed in that 4 to 6 week window, I wasted 4 to 6 weeks of time. But all I do is just roll it back 4 weeks. But if we go and try to do some huge capital expenditure, and we're gonna turn on our new ERP system 30 months from now, and we don't find out that we wasted our money for 30 months, that's where you're in pilot. That's where all the bad reputation of digital transformation comes from. Jeff nailed it on the agile piece too, as well.
Yeah, that's happened a lot.
Transformation is messy. Good parties leave a mess. That's exactly it. And we learn through this. And back to your point about the small chunks, right? That's also in how, if you reflect on how human behavior, and you talk about bringing the humans, we do that naturally, right? No human, think about anything that you knew there, like I want to make a cake, right? You sit there for 3 days figuring out how to make a cake, and then and it doesn't work out. No, you don't. You try small things, and that's how we naturally work. And so the funny thing about all this is that we, again, back to the engineers, we actually inherently, that's what we do. We are agile inherently. We learn by small mistakes. That's how we operate. That's how kids learn. But when we become engineers, we tend to do things like, these ERP implementations. No, we can't take a first step until we know everything. We need to have all spreadsheets in place. Every last detail needs to be known. All contingency needs to be mapped. And that goes back to culture, right? We need to break that. And so part of the hard part of breaking or creating that culture that you talk about, Walker and Jeff in your party, is, we have to break this mentality of engineers that we need to know everything before we take that first step.
Dwayne, I know you want to pivot, but I think this is a very important point. This is a real world application. And I want to, and this is for the manufacturers out there. This is for industry. I was in a meeting with a client in like 2016. And I used to do these meetings where I would ask, they would bring us in and they would say, hey, we want, Intellic Integration to help us be digital. And so I would ask them to put together a group of people that were cross-functional. And the most important people were the operations people. I always wanted like actual operators, like the people who did the actual work. That's who I wanted. The mechanics. I wanted the electricians. I wanted the people who looked frustrated as hell when they came in. This is another waste of my time because I got more important things to do. I was looking for those faces. And I asked the question in the room. This was for an oil and gas provider, but I asked the question in the room. I want you guys to be thinking about a problem you've been trying to solve for a week, a month, a year that you have not been able to solve in your job function. And then I gave a presentation. And at the end, we go around the room, and a lease operator in oil and gas, a lease operator is a person who is responsible for many oil and gas locations, and they could be spread out over hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of miles. So he'll only go visit maybe 10 on one day, 10 on the next day, right? And it's all cellular connection. It's impossible to stay connected. And the guy says to me, he says, we have this fancy alarm system, and I get a text message. I got a high tank alarm, and he goes, I got a high tank alarm a couple days ago at 2:00 in the morning. And I call a pumper on a Sunday night, and we have to pay him double time to go out there and pump that tank down. When he gets out to that tank, the tank barely has anything flowing into it. He goes, it basically was going to hold that level for like 10, 12, 16 more hours. He goes, I didn't need to know that I had a high tank level. I needed to know how much time I had left in my tank so that I could make the optimal operational decision on when to send the pumper out. And what I say to manufacturers is, how do you unlock that idea? How do you currently unlock that idea? Because part of digital is just enabling him to implement that idea himself. And then if it works for the business, you scale it. You scale it up and apply it to your whole business. That's part of digital. And that is a story that must be told. There are many, many wonderful, incredible, optimizing great ideas in your organization. You have fancy continuous improvement strategies, but you have no mechanism to unlock the potential. How do you unlock that potential?
One of the things I find fascinating, and I expected this of this panel discussion, but when Jeff outlined these three key things in a digital transformation strategy, culture, and infrastructure, two of those three are soft,
Yep.
right? Their culture, leadership. So here we are on a digital transformation panel, and we're talking about the soft side of this. But so important, isn't it? How many times have we seen a transformation fail because those things weren't in place? So I'm glad that came out, and I'm glad it's not just a focus on the technology for the sake of technology. And I figured that's what would come out with this particular group. Let me pivot here for a moment, and I think this next question is going to tie a little bit to what we're just talking about, but it may give you a slightly different angle to look at it. So if you go to any conference, I was just recently at the ARC forum down in Orlando, and had some great conversations. The most common question that I hear at a conference, a workshop, consulting engagement is, where do I start? So where do you start, panel?
So I'll go there and then let everybody else take off. So we created we reverse engineered how organizations successfully digitally transformed. And out of that, we created a digital transformation maturity assessment for organizations. Okay. Now this is our mechanism. Lots of people do it. Okay. And what we do is we score organizations across 10 industry 4 pillars. What we did was we distilled success down into 10 pillars. And then we created a matrix of maturity across each of those pillars. And then we come up with an aggregate digital maturity score. And then we show the organization, where are they relative to the rest of the industry? Where do you start? First and foremost, you start with education. You start with, where am I and where do I want to go? Most manufacturers have no idea where they are. Like, the only way for them to find out where they are to bring in people who know this process. So the first thing you got to do is, am I digitally mature? Am I digitally immature? Where are my weak points? Do I need to improve infrastructure? Do I need to improve leadership? Do I need to change the way that we handle quality or maintenance or engineering? Am I missing my IIoT platform? Like, these are just some of the 10 pillars. That's first and foremost. Where am I? Quantifying where am I and plotting me relative to everyone else. And then the second piece is, where do I want to go? Now, you cannot define where you want to go granularly. Okay, the truth is, you don't know where you want to go. You know you want to plug into a digital supply chain. You know you want to leverage artificial intelligence and machine learning to predict the future and to make decisions. You know you want to do those things, but you don't know the micro bullet points under each of those. That's something you will learn through the process. But where you start is, where am I? Where do I go? Here, when you're ready to do a proof of concept, though, that is, I want to do something digital. All I will say is this: start small, very, very small, and don't invest more than 12 weeks. You should be able to do a proof of concept start to finish so that you can understand what digital looks like in 12 weeks or less. Okay, that, maybe 16 at the absolute most. Let's say you're the most bureaucratic organization in the world, life sciences, for example. Maybe life sciences, a proof of concept might be 4 to 6 months because they're so slow moving. But start small and controlled and learn, and then iterate.
Any thoughts?
I started this journey, 12 years ago, when people didn't even know what Industry 4.0 was in the company I was in. And I was a one-man band. And exactly what Walker is talking about is what I developed on my own. I needed to find out where the plants were, because it's same company, every plant was different. They're doing things differently. They're manufacturing the same thing, but their maturity was different. So I was invited to go to Mexico, and the plant manager's like, I want to start doing traceability on my wheels and then start gathering data. Well, we went there, we did an analysis, and then he didn't even have his PLCs hooked to the network. So, it's one of those things, like chicken, which came first, chicken or the egg, or, a cart before the horse, or, whatever you want to use. He needed to put in a network onto his manufacturing facility. So as far as digital maturity, he was nowhere close to doing what he wanted to do, but we needed to start doing that. You need to start looking at your facilities and where they are in their digital maturity and assessment. And we piggybacked on top of the continuous improvement group. We started meeting with them and attaching some of the continuous improvement projects they were doing, and kind of tacked on Industry 4.0 kind of pillars onto their pillars, and started using that as our mechanism for. And then again, education. People don't even know what's out there. You can talk about AI and things like that, augmented reality and 3D printing, but in reality, a lot of people are like, well, I don't even know how to connect that into my manufacturing facility. So
I want to say real quick, I want to make sure I articulated clearly. The art of the possible is important. So the understanding what the art of the possible is. And Jalad's team and our team, we did this for like a Toyota subsidiary a few months ago. And it was literally as simple as walking the plant floor and then having a conversation about the art of the possible. Here's what I would do over the next 4 weeks. And we would do step 1, step 2, step 3. Just a conversation about the art of the possible is a conversation that has to happen in that beginning. That's part of that education piece.
So what's interesting too is, Jeff, when you start educating people, sometimes they don't know what's out there. I remember a plant manager in Brazil didn't even know what an RFID was, because he's had his head down for 30 years trying to manufacture what he needs to manufacture, and he never even looked at technology because he didn't think it applied to him. So he didn't even know what RFID was. So educating is super important when you talk about art possible.
So
I'll add to that a little bit to kind of go, if you were to go, Jeff, what do you probably spend the most time doing? It is educating for that purpose, to tie to what you said. The biggest thing to educate on is art of the possible, to paint the picture, the vision of where you want to be, and then bring it down to the art of the practical, which is unique for each individual company for how they can approach it. The other thing I'm going to add on to kind of the engineering mindset, and this is something I learned from the book Autonomous Transformation by Brian Evergreen, is separate out the difference between future solving and problem solving, because most engineers have a problem solving mindset and they approach digital transformation with, how can I apply this technology to solve this problem? You'll never transform if you do that. You may improve 500 things, but you'll never transform. If you start with the question, what do I want my future to look like? What do I want to be capable of doing when I'm done? And what needs to be true to get there? That will completely change the direction of your company differently than pulling up a list of 100 problems that you want to solve and use technology to solve them. So that would be probably the way that I approach it. But I agree with everything that's been said.
Yeah. So strategies are
Gilad, you had
yeah. So it's exactly right. So sometimes the vision is hard for people to visualize, right? I always use the, you know, if you watch the Netflix special with Arnold Schwarzenegger, he said that his way to, he wants to visualize what the future looks. If you can visualize it, then you can get there. So instead of trying to, you know, visualize this world with, you know, artificial intelligence and all that, that's hard for people. It's too abstract. What I say is focus on the outcome. The reason why digital transformation is so interesting for everybody, it's because like other transformations before it, it brought around order of magnitude productivity gains. So it's about productivity. So if we can visualize our plant that is, you know, use some three-figure measure, more productive, 100% more productive. And we, you know, productivity, of course, is measured in how they measure productivity, volume, throughput, demand fulfillment, whatever it is, OE. And then say, okay, that is the vision. And then you go back to what you guys are saying, start small. And we align very quickly on you know, traditional lean principles. Let's go to Gemba. Let's go find a problem. Now look at that problem in the light of, I'm not going to improve it 5%. I want to improve it 100%, 200%. That's the vision and not the outcome. So that's much less abstract. And again, then we apply, as Walker said, it's 4 to 12 weeks, show value, show that increase in productivity measurable through data, meaning that it's not just a theoretical exercise.
It's empirical.
There's actually technology that is capturing data that shows you some graphical visualization or, you know, tabular visualization of what you were before, what you are after, and there is a measurable productivity increase that is in the 2 to 3 digits, right?
And Dwayne, this is very important. This conversation is the most important. This is the most valuable part of this panel right here. Here's why. Executives don't want to hear this. Everything we're saying right now, they don't want to hear this part. They want to know how much and when. How much do I need to vote yes on? And when will I have my digital transformation done in my box? And the truth is the moment you take that approach, you have doomed yourself to failure. It is an iterative process on a strategy and on an infrastructure, and it starts small and then it becomes exponential return. If you look, the technology S curve looks like an S for a reason in continuous improvement, because as fluency goes up, you start to solve bigger and bigger problems on one common strategy and infrastructure at scale. The beginning is a point. It's a singularity. It is not some big, huge capital investment. And this conversation right here is the most important conversation we're having right now. This is the one they don't want to hear. They want to know, is it 10 million over 5 years? And what are you going to deliver at what milestones? That's not how you approach this. When Tesla started building Warp, which is the infrastructure upon which Tesla is built, your car, their ERP system, everything is all on one infrastructure called Warp. When they first started, that was 2 guys in an office, and it was an idea. And that became the infrastructure upon which Tesla operates today and all their suppliers. This is the most important part. This is what was most valuable right here.
Yeah. So what we're saying essentially, Walker, is that in order to digitally transform, and this is at the board level now, you have to put on executives in your company that think that way. Because if they think in numbers in this, and this is back to what Deming said, running your company on figures alone, is the sin, right? And that is the thing. And in sometimes, if we're in a stable, between transformations, that is the right, way to lead a company. While we are in transformation, we need leaders, that are capable and understand that that's what they need to do. And it's risky, and not everybody wants to do it because, there's going to be failure.
Yeah. Well, panel, we've got 6 minutes here. So I think what I'm going to do is pivot to our final question. And I'm honestly, I'm going to make this kind of a free for all. Is there a question that I didn't ask that you would like to have addressed, or is there some point that you really want to drive home? So I don't want to mean to put you on the spot necessarily, Jeff, but do you have anything to add along those lines?
Well, I'm going to actually kind of stick to, we got together just to talk about the ideas that we were going to have today. And that's about what we did. And we got excited about the banter we were going to go through. But like you said, this is unscripted. But one of the things I actually did like that was brought up that we were hoping we were going to get to today is around not just the changes in manufacturing, but kind of the shifting in the role of sales and marketing and how that is kind of impacting the industry as a whole. And I kind of see, I'll give a short answer here, but there's two specific and significant phenomenon that are occurring simultaneously that help exacerbate this problem. The proliferation of new technologies itself and the proliferation of new buzzwords attempting to contextualize, make sense, and sell these technologies. Now, let's assume for argument's sake that all buzzword creation is good intentions, which we know isn't true, but for argument's sake, let's say it is. Despite these good intentions, there's a substantial gap between companies striving to adapt and innovate and the entities eager to provide the necessary changes. And that gap is not merely a technological divide, but also a communication understanding chasm. And I actually think that's where a lot of thought leaders have kind of risen over the past few years, and social media and places like LinkedIn have taken off, is because people are looking for that kind of bridge to connect all these things together when they change very, very fast. They don't have the time to invest to figure it out themselves.
But buzzwords are not necessarily bad. It's in human nature. We're trying to explain something we don't understand, right? So it's sorting. What's bad is that people hang their future on one single buzzword without understanding what it really means, right? And again, that's where we need to have the strategy and clear vision to what the outcome is.
Gilad, I'll give you 30 seconds. Any parting thoughts beyond what you?
I'll leave it there.
Okay.
Dwayne, I wanted to say that this is really, really important. It's the nature of education and work, and understanding if you're a young person. If you look at our students at IoT.University, about 1/3 of them are college kids. So they're in engineering programs. So we have like 1,200 to 1,500 kids who are in engineering programs. Okay. I think 200 and something are at Purdue. Okay. So, the nature of education has changed. You don't go to college to get your whole education. You're literally coming out of college and then starting your education all over again before you are really valuable to your organization. That's number one. Number one is universities aren't currently teaching the skills that are needed. There are a couple out there that are. Purdue, I would argue, is doing it better than most universities, but most universities are not teaching the skills that employers need in digital transformation specifically. And number two, the nature of work is changing. Okay. So only about half of Americans are actually going to be employable just in the near future, right? Because of the advent of artificial intelligence, the average employable IQ is going to go up into the 90s. The people who are working, however, are only going to be doing the things that they are absolutely best at and they love. And so if you are a student today, if you're a 20-year-old, 21-year-old engineering student, you need to be thinking about, what is it I'm actually really good at? Like, what is my expertise? What is my aptitude that makes me the best at what I do? And number two, what do I love? Like, what is it? What is the thing, the task, the problem that gets me out of bed at 2:00 in the morning because I don't want to wait until 7 to get back to it? What is that? And you need to be asking yourselves that as as potential members of the workforce in the future.
Isaac, we'll let you wrap up.
It's funny, Walker was talking about stuff that I was thinking about, even as far as, what is the future of work? And I did a presentation. I don't remember where I got the statistic, but something like 40% of the jobs that my kids will have when they're a working age don't even exist right now. Yeah. It's those kind of things that are being developed by technology that we can't even think of. I mean, we didn't think 10 years ago that, people will be making money being influencers. I mean, that it never occurred to us.
Or writing prompts for artificial intelligence.
Yeah, right, exactly. But I say, yeah, don't be scared of the technology. Let's embrace it. This is exciting times. This technology that we can bring into manufacturers will attract those young people who are looking to do cool stuff. So I would just say that it's
Yeah.
this is an exciting time in manufacturing in general. So
Well, panel, we're at target time, and I don't know if you remember, but coming into this, Jeff, you kind of said this a moment ago, but what I said is I was just looking for an interesting conversation. Mission accomplished. So thank you to each of you. Thank you not only for this conversation, but thanks to all that you contribute online and to the community as a whole. So, well, I also want to thank Casey Myers, who you don't see, but is making sure that all this takes place. So Casey, thank you for making this happen. You rock. Thanks to the hundreds of you that are online watching this live. And then thanks for the thousands more. They're going to be watching this on demand. If you can, go to LinkedIn and follow each of these guys. I think you'll find some interesting content as you see what they post. So thanks again to the panel. Have a great day and have a great rest of your week. Now let's go do good things.
thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Wayne.
Thanks.
Bye, everybody.